The Mazda 6 has established itself well in our market, and soon it will be completely withdrawn from sale. Only used examples will remain, at a variety of prices, as the car has been in production since 2012. Let's take a look at the model's history and examine its biggest issues. Engines and gearboxes. In theory, the Mazda 6 only offers one of 3 engines, but in practice, there were 7. From the beginning of production until its end, a 2.0-liter petrol engine with 145 and 165 horsepower was offered without any significant changes. The less powerful variant was eventually discontinued. The 2.5-liter petrol engine underwent a single modification in 2017, when power increased from 192 to 194 horsepower. A mild hybrid system and 2-cylinder deactivation were also introduced. The 2.2 Skyactiv D diesels were available in 3 power outputs: 175 horsepower until 2018 and 184 horsepower from 2018, as well as 150 horsepower until 2021. Each was offered with either a manual or automatic transmission and front-wheel drive or AWD. Of the petrol engines, only the 145 horsepower variant did not receive an automatic. All Mazda 6 engines meet the European Euro 6 emission standard and from 2018 Euro 6 D-Temp. One of the biggest flaws of the Mazda 6's petrol engines was their performance. Typically, for naturally aspirated engines, they operate over a fairly wide rev range and accelerate linearly and uniformly. For example, the 2.0-liter petrol with 165 horsepower has similar performance to the Passat B8 with the 1.4 TSI engine with 150 horsepower, though subjectively, the turbocharged German engine accelerates much faster. Another feature of Mazda's gasoline engines was their narrow fuel consumption range. This means you can't achieve record low fuel consumption like the aforementioned TSI, but on the other hand, with dynamic driving, you can still count on quite good results. In practice, those who like to press the gas hard can boast low fuel consumption, but if the driver switches from a modern turbo petrol engine to a naturally aspirated Mazda and is a fan of eco-driving, they may be disappointed. After all, petrol engines don't consume much fuel, and diesels can be considered as economical as those of the competition. Which engine to choose? When deciding on fuel type, it's also worth considering the market, which is predominantly fuel-powered. Only about 20% are diesels, so the selection is much smaller. Furthermore, diesels have been almost unique among cars since 2018, around 3%. It's also worth recalculating fuel consumption, taking into account rising diesel prices and the relatively stable price of gasoline. If a gasoline car consumes 8 liters per 100 kilometers at €6.60 per liter, the cost per 100 kilometers will be €53. However, if a diesel car consumes 6 liters per 100 kilometers at €7.70, the cost will be €46. A difference of €7 per 100 kilometers isn't a good economic argument for buying a car that can generate much higher repair costs. Over 100,000 kilometers, you'll save about €7,000 on fuel, and repairing even the injection system is a much larger expense. It's also worth knowing that diesels have 2 turbochargers. A new set costs around €8,000. Now let's move on to the technical aspects. Diesels offer better dynamics than gasoline engines, especially in the most powerful variant, which delivers a trifle 445 Newton-meters of torque. Driving a diesel engine offers more acceleration pleasure, unless, of course, you enjoy dynamic driving and manual gear changes, in which case choose the 2.5 Skyactiv G gasoline engine. Manual transmissions are fantastic. They offer a joy just from shifting gears. By opting for a petrol engine, we're choosing a much lighter load on the gearbox and clutch. The most powerful version generates 258 Newton-meters of torque, while the least powerful diesel engine produces 320 Newton-meters. Petrol engines don't have a dual-mass flywheel, while diesels do, and they cost around €2,700. If you value diesel power, the good news is that these engines are generally quite good. The injection and turbocharging systems are durable. However, the dual-mass flywheel isn't very durable. It should definitely be replaced, along with the clutch, before 200,000 kilometers. In early diesel engines, camshafts tend to wear out. The first symptom is shavings in the oil. Inspect the old oil when changing it. Replacing a single camshaft costs around Euro 2,000 to 2,500. Some say they're made of weak materials, but you also need to remember to have an oil service, and a very thorough one at that. In this regard, it's not only worth shortening oil change intervals, but also closely monitoring the oil level. This isn't about oil shortages, but rather excess oil and fuel dilution resulting from failed DPF burnout. The oil pressure warning light comes on. Unfortunately, this happens quite often, requiring the car to be taken on the road and driven at a constant speed. This problem has been gradually eliminated, but it still recurs and carries the risk of engine seizure. Gasoline engines tend to have much less common problems, though they do occur more frequently, perhaps due to scale. These are primarily related to the MAF sensor, intermittent misfires while driving, and valve lifters, low oil level. The start and stop system, which reports a fault, is also a problem. Direct gasoline injection is highly regarded in these cars. It boasts long service life and virtually no carbon buildup problems. This may be due to the Skyactiv G engine's poor low RPM performance, which encourages drivers to rev them higher. It's worth noting that, despite direct injection, the LPG market has already developed gas systems, and reviews of their operation are positive. In my opinion, choosing a petrol engine is much less risky economically, although these units are prone to more minor faults. Fuel consumption isn't a factor here, but a diesel is only suitable for those who drive a lot on the highway, including those who need four-wheel drive. Typical faults. The Mazda 6 is a fairly refined model, but it does have its weaknesses in the materials used, specifically the quantity. This includes the bodywork, which is covered with a delicate, thin paint that isn't very resistant to chipping. The risk of corrosion is also so high that the importer applied an additional anti-corrosion coating to the cars when they left the showrooms. Corrosion is also to be expected in the exhaust system, even in newer cars. The use of lightweight and thin materials unfortunately impacts performance. Brake discs aren't particularly durable, and they can also vibrate when braking, a problem that's difficult to eliminate. The hood can also sway at higher speeds, but it's not bothersome. You get used to it. The upholstery wears out even after 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers. Thin and delicate leather. In less used cars, you can also expect a whistling sound around the side windows. Other common issues include minor equipment failures, e.g. key or mirror folding mechanism, and sensor issues, e.g. ABS or TPMS. It's worth checking with your authorized dealership for engine management software updates from time to time, and, after purchasing, visit them to verify whether the car is subject to an airbag recall. Operating costs. Unfortunately, owning a third-generation Mazda 6 is quite expensive. Not all parts are available as aftermarket replacements, and dealership prices can be prohibitive. It's worth searching online on classified sites. You might find original parts sold outside of dealerships. Despite the car's relatively low failure rate, you still need to have some money to repair potential issues. A significant advantage and drawback is the extensive used parts market. The downside is that this is due to the high number of car thefts. Used parts don't always come from salvaged cars. This also carries a significant risk of losing the car. Theft insurance, or a good anti-theft system, is the first thing you should do right after purchasing it. A common tire size for this car is slightly larger than the standard 225 55ths 17V. Good quality tires in this size cost around Euro 600 to 800 each. Optional, larger 225 45ths 19W tires were also often installed. A good quality tire costs around 900 euros.